Welcome back, YouTube. It is the Drunk Capitalist here today, and I am finally back. Today we're going to discuss a well-known controversial topic. We're really not sure why this topic is controversial at all. It seems like this is the only group of people on earth, meaning black people, that people have all types of opinions and hearsay and say so about whether or not black people deserve reparations. So we're gonna continue that conversation, and there's a Jubilee video about whether or not black people deserve reparations. You see, I have my own long theory about it, but I can have one because I'm black, right? So with that said, let's just get right into the video and we can find out more about how I feel about what these people are saying. I haven't really heard everything. I've seen a few clips here and there floating around the internet. And I want to actually put the entire video into context before I react to it, because I'm not going to get into the whole vibe of clipping people and then canceling them because I made an opinion about a clip and not the entire full context. So let's get right into it.
We need reparations for the black community.
Right off the bat, my answer is yes. Yes, the black community needs reparations.
I don't think people need like individualized like paychecks. Like I don't think that's gonna like work. But I think pouring funds into communities who could really use it, building jobs there.
See, I always have an issue when people wanna say, well, they shouldn't just give you a direct check. That's not gonna help. What do you mean that's not gonna help? You've never even tried it, number one. You've given us nothing individually, or really, they've given people things as a group, and we've seen how that works out. I want an individual check. Cut the check. What are we talking about? Like, oh, it's not gonna work because you gave it to individuals. Like, no, that sounds ridiculous.
More education there, like more opportunities would do so much. Like that's how I see it should be.
Anytime that black communities in the US try to, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, they...
Two biracial women, and I guess they're on opposite ends of the conversation, and I'm gonna let that sit for a while.
were attacked. Like, I think it was in Tulsa, they bombed the city. Black Wall Street, it was completely destroyed. So again, something needs to be done.
So yeah, when they bring up Tulsa, people bring up Tulsa a lot. Tulsa's like a big, recently widely known. I don't know why it's recently known. I don't know why only just now people realize what Juneteenth was. I figured everyone knew what Juneteenth was since I was a kid. I thought we just celebrated it in secret. I was completely unaware that people just never heard of it, in the same way people just never heard of Tulsa. And the reason people always bring up Tulsa specifically is because that's all that they know. In reality, there were many, many, many other black towns that were basically treated the same way, that were effectively shut down by neighboring white communities. Some people's whole towns became actual lakes. Like, if you've ever heard of Lake Lanier in Atlanta, yes, that entire town is underneath that lake. People, like, this has happened. Central Park in New York City used to be a black neighborhood, and the government, the actual government, took it out of eminent domain. See, black people were trying to pull themselves up by their old bootstraps, because they never could get nothing new, and they tried to make communities, but they were destroyed by the very hating ASS people that were around.
There was a representative from Ohio, I can't remember his name, but he was a radical Republican and advocated for the phrase 40 acres and a mule for every emancipated slave. So there was supposed to be reparations, and there never was. And I think, especially as a Jewish person, I mean, Jews received reparations for the Holocaust and are still receiving them. And in my mind, there's no amount of money that will ever undo the wrong of the Holocaust. So that all the money in the world will never make it right. But I think the idea and principle of reparations is good. Logistically, I don't know how it would happen.
And it's the same people making these nonsense arguments. Like, you, sir, you literally just said, oh, well, Jewish people got reparations. He's Jewish. Whatever. That's beside the point, though, right? You literally just said Jewish people receive reparations, but then you follow up saying, hey, black people deserve reparations, but then you ended off saying, logistically, I don't know how that would work. How does it work for you? Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? The exact same way it works for you, meaning whoever is there in Germany is paying taxes and it's paying you. That's how it works.
I just wanted to say the reason I stayed back was because I wasn't entirely sure what was meant by reparations, but your example of the Holocaust, I would say that I agree.
Similar reason, when I think of reparations, I think...
You see, I didn't know what you meant by reparations, but like when you like explained it as though, because you're Jewish or whatever, then I just suddenly understood what you meant. Like, wait, what?
Of something similar to a stimulus check. My worry is, with the lack of like financial literacy, will we actually make strides? So I would love the idea of investing money into programs in underserved communities.
No, that's already what's being done, and a lot of communities, the money is not actually spent on actually helping the people in the communities. Yes, they receive some form of help, but a vast majority of the money goes to the people operating the actual nonprofit, and that is part of our terrible issue that we have. Everyone's donating money to BLM and this and that, but then all of the money is getting taken, scraped off the top, and then the people in the community that you're supposed to be helping have to now divide the little 10%, the crumbs that are left from the bread. Like, that's what we're dealing with. But I understand her point in saying, hey, we need the education. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you don't give us the money. You see, there's a way to give people money and educate people at the same time. Like, there's ways to go around that. We do need to be educated in finance, but that doesn't mean, oh, you don't know how to handle money, therefore we're not going to give it to you. To me, that don't rock.
I do have a fear that even if we did have the money, without that generational knowledge of how to take care of our finances, that it would just deplete and defeat the purpose.
That is a legitimate fear. I totally get it. She feels like, hey, if you give people money but you don't give them education, it will deplete. But I think the way she's forming that fear is really not really getting to the target of what that fear really comes from. And if we're being honest, we're working in a capitalist system, and a lot of people own a lot of things and they control a lot of resources. So if our money depletes, it's not just because of the financial illiteracy, it's also just the access to not having resources and appropriate ways in which to actually invest that money. Unfortunately, because we don't own a lot of industries, even though we are faces of certain industries like football and basketball and entertainment, we don't actually own those industries. So, right, follow me, even when we get the money, we have to then still give it away to other communities. That's the overall arching issue, is that we weren't given the acres, we weren't given the actual resource, we weren't given the mule to work the land. Like, we weren't given that, whereas every other peoples that were here at a certain time period were given that for free.
But even if that were to happen, though, I still think that that would still be the right step. You know, we'll give these people the funds or whatever, we'll give them our promise, and if they float or sink or whatever, that's on them. At least, like, we as a country took the right step.
But that's when you get into really, really scary territory. You see, if it was the case that the U.S. decided, hey, we could tussle and tussle about different numbers, but say each person got $10,000, right? $10,000 in some cases could change your life. $10,000 to 40 million different people could change that community, right? But what happens when that community, like I said before, doesn't have any resources, doesn't have the literacy, doesn't have access to certain investments? And then they have to spend that money because they've already been struggling, which is the whole point of getting the reparations, right? Now they've spent the $10,000. Now everybody's looking at you like, well, there you go, bozo. You're a broke ASS. This is well, you got your reparations, there's nothing we can do. The way that everything is set up currently is too much for a community to bear without having an actual PLAN. If there is no community PLAN plan, it's just not gonna work, and our worst fears will come true. We'll get the reparations, we'll have to spend all the money, and nothing will go to the next generations, or a few lucky people will have managed to be successful and pass it down and become part of the wealthy blacks, you know. But then we'll end up worse off than we were before, because now we don't have a leg to stand on as far as reparations anymore. That's the real fear, is having the money but no plan, no resources, and no literacy.
I for money going to the community. I am for that, because the communities right now are the way they are because of things in the past. But to give out checks to individual people, there's a difference between learning from the past and then still getting caught up in the past. I mean, if
what do those two statements got anything to do with each other? Like, and I'm sick of people talking about no individual checks. It's for the individuals. We are individually suffering. so why? What is our issue with giving it to individuals? Stop trying to give it to these community organizations that you don't even know who actually is the person doing all the finances, who's writing the checks. You don't know any of this information. So why you keep forcing yourself to try to give it to community organizations? It's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, I could go back in time and be like, hey, you never gave us the 40 acres and a mule. I would be all for that, and I would get on that for the people who were affected and actually went through slavery. But in today's age, like no one's experienced it and gone through it. Yes, the communities are taking hit by that, but so I mean, I've never.
You don't think your answer?
What is wrong with? What do you mean we didn't experience slavery, therefore there's no reason for us to get the reparations? What are you talking about? The whole point is that people that did experience slavery never got paid for the hundreds and hundreds of years that they worked, and their descendants, who are us, are now still dealing within a system that are continue to treat us for the past 100 years like we're less than, and locking us out of opportunities so that their generational wealth can continue to grow exponentially while ours remains the exact same. We have the exact same amount of wealth now that we did 100 years ago. That's an issue.
Slavery?
I think they do, but I haven't. I've never been in it, so why should I get a check from somebody else who never put it? You should be going way back.
So what about the people who are the descendants of the slave owners, who are still reaping the financial benefits of your ancestors?
Exactly. The people that own the slaves, they all get to keep all of their stuff. The people that were the slaves, they got nothing, so they passed down exactly what they had, the nothingness. Because they never received the 40 acres and a mule, they could never pass down anything for anyone to build on top of it. Do you understand? A lot of families were able to build generational wealth and spread out their family and continue to grow. In fact, because of that, they even know their family. Would you look at that? A lot of people in America don't even know their family. Therefore, they could barely trace their ancestry, right?
Who slaved in those fields for literally generation after generation. You don't think that during that time, your great-grandfather could have been building a business that could be flourishing by now, and you would have a multi-million-dollar franchise as they do off the backs of others? You don't think that deserves some rectification for you in the present time?
To be honest, no, because again, it's something that happened in the past. Again, I haven't experienced it. I'm doing fine
this dude sounds like a mouth breather. He sounds ridiculous. I'm doing fine right now, so I don't need it. Then we shouldn't give out checks because I don't need it. What are you talking about, sir? Just because you are fine does not mean the entire community of black people are fine. Like, a lot of black people are under whatever it is that they're under, and I'm not giving black people an excuse to not do anything or not work with what they have at the moment, right? I'm not saying that we can't build things without reparations. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm saying we are starting super late. We're starting with no shoes, and we're in a race, and we still got a race, and we better keep racing. We better keep running. But just because we're running doesn't mean we can't ask for some stuff back from what we lost from not being able to run in the first place. Like, that doesn't make sense. Cut the check. And you need to cut the nonsense talking about some I'm doing all right. No, you're not. Because guess what? I can guarantee you he doesn't own a business. He's not employing himself. I could just tell by the way he's speaking. Like I said, he sounds like how he sounds. You don't own a business. The minute that the person that employs you decides that they don't want you there anymore, you have now lost your access to capital. You have now lost your access to money. And then you won't be saying, I'm doing all right. Your employer is probably not a black person. You won't be saying, my community is doing okay, because the community that's employing you has the control of whether or not you feel comfortable, right? But some of y'all are not gonna get it. Some people don't get it. This is an example right here. Some people just don't get it.
All over somebody else's ancestors, who I don't even know who enslaved my ancestors. I don't need it. I have no reason to.
You don't know who enslaved your ancestors. Exactly.
Have it.
So for me personally, I'm not upset about it, but I do feel my grandfather, on his side, they were the first family in the state of Texas to actually file for reparations. And for me, I'm succeeding in spite of that. But to this gentleman's point, when the government says, hey, we're gonna do a thing, obviously the government in itself saw the weight in the air of the wrong, just as the German government did. I think if I want to buy 90 gold chains, that's my business. I think it would be unfortunate, but I think that if I'm entitled to something, I think it should be in the same fashion that the people of Jewish descent got it. I think it should be in the same fashion that the people that are Japanese descent got it. So you might think it doesn't affect you, but overall, I think that we have been greatly impacted by slavery, even up to current. I just choose not to focus on it nonstop so it doesn't become something that holds me back. But I definitely think it's something that we're entitled to.
She's on point, 100%. She's on point, and I like how she brought up a little bit of each little criticism of it, like the 90 gold chains or whatever, because a lot of times when it comes to giving the black community money, people are overly policing on how we may be spending it. Like, the assumption is always you're gonna buy a bunch of jewelry and Jordans and you're gonna waste the money. Well, it would be ours to waste. It would be our mistake to make, would it not? And just the sheer assumption that that's what we're gonna go do with it, I understand where it comes from, because we see it all the time, which is why we need the financial literacy, by the way. We see it all the time. We have young men and some young women, but often the men that come from very impoverished neighborhoods become superstar rappers or musicians, and then they lose it all, right? They lose all the money. MC Hammer of sorts, and because they bought chains, Mike Tyson bought tigers and mansions and drugs and women and casinos and doing all this ridiculous stuff. But I think if we had a plan as a community to actually execute getting the reparations and what we're going to do with it, and also making sure that we get it on an individual level, not as a community, whatever that means, because that's already bad news. How do you give a community money but not give the individuals? I don't know. It's a lot of BS things floating around. So, it really says a lot. There's another video that they have as well. I don't want to hold you guys here too long, so this, if you want to end here, you can end here. But there's another video from Jubilee where they brought black people that had a previous conversation 3 years ago. They brought them all back, and they also asked them about the reparation thing. Here we go.
The U.S. should pay black people reparations.
Yeah.
The U.S. should pay black people reparations. Three,
Wait.
2, 1, go.
Without it.
I will say though, it's not just black people. U.S. owes a lot of people money.
The U.S. doesn't exist without black help, African Americans.
Hands down, at every stage.
I'd like to correct it though. I think something should be done for the descendants of slaves.
That's why I was like,
See, this is one of the craziest points I've heard, and like, trust me, I get it. Oh, I get it. People, and what they mean by descendants of slaves is there's a whole movement called ADOS, African descendants of slaves, specifically black people that were descendants of those who were slaves, meaning their entire lineage could be traced back to America, slavery, you know. But again, like I said earlier in the video, a lot of people can't even trace their ancestry. And so there's a few that can. And for those people to say, hey, I had a, grandparent or great-grandparent that was a slave, I deserve the money, you don't deserve the money. Even though you face the exact same oppression that I face right now, you don't deserve the money, I deserve it. And I get where they're coming from, but I think that doing even more division is the worst way to go about it, because at the end of the day, these exact people are going to want our support, other black people who maybe aren't ADOS or are ADOS but can't find the proper paperwork to prove that they're ADOS, right? They're going to want your support. They're going to want to get the check in front of you and then buy the crystal and stunt on you after you help them get the money. But that's beside the point, because it's not really a tit for tat. I think as an entire black community, the only division I would make, right, would probably be, it's going to be a hot take. I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be a hot take. The only division I would make would be just Africans. Only Africans that came here in the past, 40, 50 years will be counted out. That's it. I think Caribbeans should be considered, especially those who came. I think we've all heard of Marcus Garvey, came very, very early. We can't quite say that, Caribbeans didn't contribute anything. We have people of Caribbean descent. Almost every originator of hip hop has Caribbean descent. Are we going to say that those people, under the duress that they were in, that actually created hip hop and hip hop culture, right? They don't deserve anything because their parents came to America 30 years before they were born. But, that's the biggest divide I see right now, is that now we have black people trying to divvy up who deserves more and based on what. And if we want to say, hey, ADOS people that can actually trace their lineage deserve more than black people who aren't ADOS, fine. But what we're not going to do is ask people to fight for some small group of people for them to get stuff and we don't get anything, because we've already seen that for the entire history of America. We're tired of fighting for people and getting nothing in return.
Black Americans. I take it as black Americans.
Yeah, because I feel like my family just got here in the 70s. So, do I feel like I deserve what a person deserves whose family has literally been...
Just got here 50 years ago? That means your family has dealt with 50 years of what's going on in America. Granted, that it's of their choosing, but that's why I make the distinction between Africa and the Caribbean, because the Caribbean, which also experienced the same type of slavery, even if it wasn't all from the same hands of slavers, right? The Caribbean has a completely different issue of why they come to America versus Africa. Yes, Africans also come here to seek opportunity and wealth and all of that. But the difference is Africa actually has resources, right? So when Africans come here, they leave the resources they have over back home and they come here for whatever things in America that they want to have. Caribbean countries don't have that many resources, especially nothing in comparison to what Africa has, okay? Africa is the biggest resource on this planet. So when African, to me, and I'm just being biased because I feel like we all came from Africa. The reason we got here because African, politics and selling of slaves from Africans. So why would we give the Africans that came over here willingly money from the pot of Africans that were sold unwillingly? That part doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I exclude them. But for the Caribbeans, I'm biased, maybe because I'm also Caribbean. Being in the Caribbean as an African was not a choice. And having to leave your Caribbean country, which you fought for independence for, and no one gave you reparations for it, and going to America is not a choice of choosing luxury, it's a choice of choosing survival, right? It's a completely different situation. You have people from Cuba literally swimming through the ocean to come to America. It's not because of any other reason other than their country does not have the resources to keep a decent living standard. Same thing in Haiti. People are taking overly, worn down boats to try to get to different places. So it's a lot, y'all.
No, the question you asked was a good question.
Yeah.
Do you deserve? I think yes. But how much do you deserve in comparison to others with longer history here? That's the next question.
Why does a recent immigrant from Africa that came maybe 10 years ago deserve money?
There is systemic oppression still happening.
Yeah, no, a recent African from 10 years ago does not deserve any money. That's just how I see it.
Happening today. So they're still impacted. It may not be the same degree, but they're still impacted. And reparation for me doesn't mean here's $5 or here's $1 million, one individual black person. It means what are we doing to repair the community that we have disenfranchised in our society? That's all it means to me.
Yeah. I mean, anyways.
Yes, repair, but also cut the check. Why are we always trying to skirt around the idea of giving me a hard check? Same way they did during the panty, where everyone got hard checks. That wasn't reparations because everyone got it. So, like I said, hard checks.
Reparations, the term to me is people look at it as like getting a check.
Right.
And a check needs to be cut. don't make no mistake about that. A check needs to be cut because the wealth of this country was stolen from our labor, bro.
Yeah.
So, and don't think just because you from Africa, you don't deserve none of that either. Because they did a number on Africans as well.
Police target.
Yeah, they did a number of Africans. We're also Africans, but I think there's a huge difference when you're on your own land. I'm just saying, it's just a difference. But yeah, that was the video. Obviously, everyone has their own different opinions as far as reparations, but as far as me and this channel goes, we will always be for reparations. I don't care how it gets done, other than cutting a check. I don't care the fine print. I just give people the money and call it a day. And that was the video topics on reparations. As far as you know, on this channel, I will always support reparations. The conversation is ongoing. There are people fighting right now on the front lines to get the Black community their reparations. And I really hope that we don't get thwarted by the idea of trying to overly cut, split, and separate each other based on, you know, some type of victim Olympic type of situation where you deserve this and you don't deserve that simply because this and that. No, there should only be very few distinctions and maybe different tiers of financial enrichment based on the families. But yeah, that's all that I have for you guys today. I feel like this was a cool little conversation. And I hope that I've enlightened some people and I got the conversation going. Please like, share, comment below. Let's keep talking about this situation because it's not going to go away. As long as we are on this land of the United States of America, we are going to be asking for reparations until they get rid of us, okay? So I'll see you guys later. Peace.